I would say that all of her exes live in Texas, but there's so many of them. They could be spread all over the USA at this point, okay? Today we're going to continue our discussion on the Rudy Farias mystery missing man case, and we're going to be specifically talking about his mother's sordid past and her marriages and how that aligns with possibly what's going on in the case today. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. The little pretend sofa's behind me and the not so pretend Mr. Roscoe's in my arms. Why, you might ask? Is it because so many people don't think he's real? Well, that's part of it. But the biggest thing is he's chicken scratching on the sofa and messing with the audio. So I'll be holding him for right now. And my name is Paul. Now you heard in my little intro you saw in the thumbnail, what we're going to be doing today is continuing our discussion on the Rudy Farias case. Now if you're not familiar with this, Rudy allegedly went missing 8 years ago, but it turns out he wasn't missing. He was living with his mother, turns up on a church doorstep 8 years ago, very recently, maybe a month ago at this point. Long story short, it turns out that she's been lying the whole time and he has not been missing, and it's been this crazy case left and right. So there's this article I just read, it's from Insider. And we'll get into like the writer and all that of it, but they did all this research on like her marriages and whatnot, and I'm reading through it and I was like, oh my god, this scam stuff has been going on for a while. It's very telling in many different ways. So what we're going to do today is review that for this video. Now how we'll do that is I've gone through and picked out like some snippets that I want to talk about specifically with this, as well as some court documents to reference, and we'll put them on screen. We'll talk about them and I'll make commentary throughout. I've also linked the article down below if you don't want to hear my commentary and you just want to read the article and look at all the documents yourself. Go for it. And so that's what we'll do. So here we go. Let's dive on in. Now what we're going to do is the computer is this way right here, so I'm going to be looking at this as I go over these. I have put Roscoe back on the sofa. We'll see if he chicken scratches. Let's just see if he... No, he's laying down. It should be fine. It should be fine. If he starts to chicken scratch, we'll just deal with it. So let's look at the first little snippet now. So as I said before, this is from Insider Magazine, and the writers of this article are Laura Italiano and Jack Newsham. And the title of it is Rudy Farias' mom, Janie Santana, has taken 8 husbands, and I mean we have to do this with this, right, to court to have called her a serial bigamist. I'm like, literally everything about this case, y'all, it doesn't matter what direction you go in, it's just like, what am I like, how help me, how does this happen? Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the first little screen snippet here of this. So as the writer states, since her first wedding in '85, Santana has been in and out of family court, waging war on her many husbands. Exactly how many husbands remains unclear. But Santana, now 55, is claiming in court documents to have had 8 of them, in a string of legal, common law, and in one case, ultimately fictitious husbands stretching back to her first I do at age 17. Now, one thing we're going to see with this, and again, if you look at the case currently going on with the allegations of fraud and all this kind of stuff with what she's done to her son, and then here's a lens to that, and then here's this article with this information, right? It makes more sense. It comes into more focus that this, if it's, again, this is all alleged at this point, right? But depending on what happens with this case and if charges come out and whatnot, you know, it's not a cute look, right? This is just, this is absolutely no way to be lifing, okay? So let's go on to the next thing here. Now, here's my thing. I'm going to put this graph on the thing. When we are at the point of having to do some graphs, some pie charts to talk about and connect the dots of alleged marriages and stuff, we got an issue, okay? We have an issue right off the rip here, okay? Period, end of story, the fact that this is even a thing, okay? But you can look here and you can see where they've nicely organized this, and we'll actually go through like a little timeline where they're like boom, 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 boom. Hats off to these authors on this, y'all. They did an amazing job with this. But you see here, you know, it just goes down here. You can pause to read and whatnot. So let's go ahead and move on to the next snippet here. Now, they write here, her marital battles have been ugly ones. Imagine that. Filled with cross accusations of adultery, cruelty, and fraud. And as they begged Texas judges to set them free, 2 of Santana's husbands, her 7th in this document and her 4th in this one, accused her of serial bigamy. Shocker. Now, here's what I've done. We're going to go through the article and then all that first, and then we're going to look at some of the documents afterward, because at first I was going to try and like be like, well, let's go look at the document now, but it's a little bit tricky. So we're just going to look at the documents because we'll basically review all that's in there, but then you can see for yourself, okay? You know, just settle down. Now, let's go ahead on to that next one. And it says the fourth husband's allegations were substantially correct and proven by full and satisfactory evidence, the judge said, and voiding that common law marriage in this ruling from 2013. Who else called Santana a bigamist? Santana herself. In 2000, she referred to her own simultaneous second and third husbands, an overlap she described in this document as she to court to void that third marriage. She said to court to avoid that third marriage. So here's the thing. When they say if you tell the truth, you have nothing to remember, or however that saying goes, this is, y'all, I mean, living proof right here, okay? Again, as you see, you can already look in this a little bit here. This is like scamming 101, okay? Whether she's scamming the system or people or whatever, it's insane the amount of effort she put into this. So it states here, so what happened to all those husbands? Well, over the years, judges have put asunder nearly all of Santana's 8 actual and claimed marriages. In the process of resolving what court documents appeared to show had been almost continual overlap. 2 of the marriages ended in divorce, 3 were voided or annulled by judge, and 1 marriage she claimed was her second from 97 to the owner of a Houston furniture store turns out to have been utter fiction. Again, not a shocker. Not a shocker, okay? So let's move on here. That's according to the Texas Marriage Index from 97 and Santana's own statement in the subsequent filing. I never had any kind of relationship with this woman, the second purported husband, Patrick Rocha, told Insider, let alone a marriage. That takes care of 6 of her actual and claimed husbands, but the above math still leaves the fates of 2 marriages, her 6th and 8th, unaccounted for in the public record. Now, they're not been able to identify this, so on and so forth. So let's keep it going. Now, on this next thing here, it says repeated attempts to, reach these men didn't happen. Now, this next quote right here, we're going to the second paragraph down, is from her niece, and it says, how she got anyone to marry her is beyond me, Santana's niece, Cass Pastel, 50 of Houston, told Insider. She is one step ahead of everybody, and I don't think we're ever going to know the truth. Now, here is one thing. So if you remember when all the interviews were going off and stuff, and basically you could tell, I'm saying this is my opinion, you could tell by some of the way the family members were talking, I was like, this is probably somebody who pulls enough stuff to where you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. And so this is almost like par for the course. Well, this person's in here saying like, how she get anyone to marry her is beyond me. I mean, if it's all true that, this comes out as proven that, yes, she is scamming like this hardcore, take the marriages out of it. Just take what she's been proven to do, what she did to Rudy, right? I mean, that alone would tell you, like, yeah, how is she, suckering these men in? And if it's also shown to find out that she's made these fictitious husbands and done this and that and the other, I mean, yes, this is not a sign of an honest, stand-up kind of a person, right? So let's continue. Now, what you'll see here is we're now going to go through this little timeline that they did, and they give some, like, bullet points and whatnot on each husband. I'll go over, like, the main topics of it, and again, like I say, I implore you to read the article yourself. It's a very good read. Let's go on here with husband number 1, divorced. Okay, so it says, Anselmo Uristi, I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name, June 1985 through April 1995. That's a long time. Janie was 17 and truck driver, and Anselmo was 20 when they married in Houston on June 29th, 85. They divorced on April 28th, 95. Their son, Charles Uristi, would die in a motorcycle accident at age 21, soon after enlisting in the Marines. Now, remember the talk that we've heard. So this will be familiar if you've been following the case. A year after her divorce, Santana's only other child was born in Houston, Rudolph Rudy Farias IV, subject of the ongoing missing son mystery. His father, Rudy Farias III, was a Houston police officer who would be paying $1,000 a month in child support for Rudy when he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 2014 while under investigation for his overtime. Now, again, just to recap, Rudy's father had gotten caught in basically, allegedly, a scheme on the force where he was like making fake tickets and stuff like that to get overtime or something like that. It was like him and like I think 3 or 4 other guys or something, and he ended up taking his life over this. Now, remember also, this is the same police, force that is, on this case, right? So I do find that part interesting. All right, let's continue. So we're on to husband number 2, fictitious, Patrick Rocha. Now, this is who we heard from earlier, 97 to 2000. It says in August 2000, Santana was eager to annul her marriage to husband number 3. So she told a Houston judge in these pro se court papers that there was a little impediment to that marriage, and that the impediment was local store owner named Patrick Rocha. Rocha had been her husband, as she told the judge, since July 15th, 97, and not by divorce, annulment, or death. They had parted. It's unclear what Santana's claims of Santana-Rocha marriage was based on. The Texas Marriage Index for 97 makes no mention of one. A decade later in this document, she herself would turn around and deny she had ever been married to the man. So again, back and forth, all that kind of stuff. Blaming the mix-up on the identity theft by a woman she said had stolen her driver's license at a bar in the late 90s. I mean, we're going to get to that in a second, but can't roll my damn eyes hard enough, okay? Her original claim of a second marriage to Rocha would come back to haunt her, though, in 2013, when it was cited as evidence of bigamy in court papers filed by Santana's 7th husband. Rocha, meanwhile, denies ever even having dated Santana, who he said had merely been a customer in his Houston furniture store some 25 years ago. Okay, so pause for a second, y'all. Get your coffee or whatever you got going, okay? We need to talk about this. Okay, so we'll get more in detail about this whole identity theft thing, right? I mean, have you ever... Here's my thing. Go get a job. Go get a job. You know McDonald's is hiring. Damn, Sunday machine never works. They need people on that 24/7 to keep it going and cleaning it. That's allegedly what they're doing all the time. This is like, go get a job. This is more work than a 9 to 5. I mean, the amount of lie after lie and manipulation after manipulation. Again, if this is all true, right? I do not know this. I was not there, okay? So there's that. This could all be a false narrative, right? I mean, I'm not, the end all be all by any means. I'm just on YouTube, for God's sake, right? So there's that. But saying that, all of the evidence that we've seen so far, it ain't looking good, okay? It's all kind of lining up to where this is on brand, as one might say. So let's keep going. We'll get more into some of these details here in a little bit. Now, husband number 3, we're on to annulled. This is John Paul Gonzalez, August 98 to February 2001. Very honestly, I'm going to say they're short, but I'm surprised they lasted this long. So it says second marriage did come in handy, though, when Santana went back to court to ditch her next marriage to John Paul Gonzalez. A year after Santana's sworn 2000 claim that she had said "I do" to Gonzalez without first having said "I don't" to Rocha, a judge approved the annulment she sought. It was awarded on February 22nd to Janie Santana Farias. And again, look at how much time you spend in court doing this. Exhausting. Think about a normal, and I don't like using the word normal, just think about a balanced person with stuff to do, basic stuff. You don't have time for all this. This is insane. This is chaos, right? And this is not to shame somebody who's gotten married multiple times or anything like that. If you're out there trying to find your person, you go do you, boo. You know what I mean? This is making a living. This is scheming. This is plotting. This is that. This is something totally different, right? So that's why I'm just being critical of it. Because I don't view it as like, oh, she just couldn't find the one. You know what I mean? It just doesn't feel like that to me at all. And especially when we see what happened to Rudy, or is happening to Rudy, I should say, it just seems like on brand that she just moved a lot of this toxicity over to him. So let's continue. So it says husband number 4 voided. This was Roberto Larios circa 99 through 2013. It says Roberto first appears on Santana's marital docket in 2010 when he filed a ponderously titled Petition for Declaratory Judgment and Division of Jointly Owned Assets. I mean, what a nightmare I'm sure that was. He wanted his stuff back, in other words. I like the way the authors lay it out for us, right? And his petition, Larios swears that he and Santana were not married, but that she owed him money, including for his investment in an unsuccessful Santana sports bar. Can you imagine going into business with the drama that has come out? Imagine the scheming and scamming that would have gone on. Can you imagine a sports bar, nonetheless, where adult beverages are served? Not a good mix. Not a good mix. Oh, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. Let's continue. We're still on the same one here, the same marriage, talking about them, talking about also bringing Rudy into the situation. It says both she and Larios are his parents, she claimed, and demanding Larios and his estate after his death be ordered to make payments for the support of the child. At Harris County, Texas, a judge found there was indeed a common law Santana-Larios marriage. Larios notes in a doozy of a response filed in May 2011. In it, Larios accuses Santana of 2 sets of bigamy, one in the late 90s and the other in the early teens. He also accuses her of lying under oath when she testified that the actual bride at the wedding to Gonzalez, husband number 3, was an identity-thieving female relative. So there. Now let's continue here. Larios countered that the relative couldn't have impersonated Santana at the wedding because she was serving a 25-year jail sentence at the time. Okay, well that's settled. In a later response of her own, Santana insisted again that she was not a bigamist. Rather, she claimed she was the victim of not just one but 2 identity thieves. This is 100%. If you've dealt, and I'm not trying to say you're diagnosed her as a narcissist because I don't know, for God's sakes, right? But it sounds like that kind of behavior. If you've ever been with one, then you know, right? This is that next level stuff you live through. This stuff right here where you're like, what? I'm just shocked she could keep it together enough to keep all these things going. But anyways, the Santana-Larios common law marriage was declared void in this decree, dated September 23rd, 2013. Now, the judge found Larios' arguments to be substantially correct and proved by full and satisfactory evidence, the decree said. So, well, there you go. Husband number 5. I mean, my God, this is exhausting, right? I'm just reading off the stuff and just the highlights of it. Can you imagine living through it? Okay, let's keep going. Husband number 5, voided. John Rodriguez, 2002 to 2007. When Harris County Sheriff's Deputy John T. Rodriguez died at age 49 on June 7, 2007, an obituary listed his survivors as his wife Janie Rodriguez, his son Rudy Rodriguez, and stepson Charles Uristi. Someone using the screen name Rudy Rodriguez Farias would then have been 10 years old. Posted a lengthy all-caps tribute signed Your Little Son Rudy on the Legacy.com post. A month later, Santana stepped forward to claim Rodriguez's North Houston house, where she and Rudy had been living, declaring herself to have been his common-law wife of 5 years. The estate battle took 3 years to reach a settlement. Come on, right? Come on. Santana agreed to drop any claim that the two had been married. She also dropped her claim that Rodriguez was Rudy Farias' adopted father. This is just gross, okay? In return for backing off, Miss Santana would have received title to the 123 Valley Lake Drive, Houston, where she allegedly hid Farias, according to one court document describing the estate battle. But Santana breached the agreement, including by failing to pay the estate $8,000, the document said. Santana's 7th husband would cite this attempt to claim Rodriguez as a common-law husband in the 2013 petition he filed to void his own marriage, calling it evidence of bigamy. Yep, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Now we're on to number 6. Status unclear. It says, Sucre Diaz, December 5th, 2009. Public records show that on December 5th, 2009, Diaz, 48, married Janie Santana Rodriguez, 41, in Harris County, Texas. Yes, Santana was still using the legal name Rodriguez, despite agreeing to no longer claim he was her common-law husband. The status of this marriage is unclear. Insider could find no record of Diaz-Santana divorce in any of the jurisdictions where it would need to be filed, including in the 3 counties in Florida where Diaz has lived, or in 1 county, Harris, Texas, where Santana has lived. They can't reach them, and the 6th Santana marriage is also mentioned as evidence of bigamy in the 7th husband's 2013 petition to void his own marriage. Let's continue on. Number 7, divorced. Gilbert Queros. I hope I'm saying that right. We're just going to go with Gilbert so I don't butcher his name. October 23rd, 2012 through 2015. So we're on a pattern at this point, about 3 years each. It was just 10 days short of his first wedding anniversary that an Arizona Air National Guardsman named Gilbert sued to void what he called his purported marriage to Santana. The marriage is void, he argued, due to the overlapping of Santana's marriages to 5 other men, and he lists them all off. The court battle between Santana and Queros would last some 2 years. At one point, Santana swore under oath in an affidavit that Queros had used sex to trick her into thinking the relationship was still on, so that I would give him money to pay his debts, which he constantly held over my head. I mean, really? I mean, seriously? I don't know about all that, but we'll see. Again, I wasn't there. But again, for me, I'm reading through this and it's all exhausting. Now, let's just continue on with this one. It says the entire time he was telling me lies, he was cavorting with another woman, Santana claimed. Oh, but always with the types. It's not okay for you to do what they're doing 10 times fold. Like, they're probably doing it times 100. If you even think about looking at somebody, they're going to freak out, right? Now, most likely also what's going on here is, if this is all true and whatnot, you know, she's going to do anything she can and throw anything she can at the wall to get what she wants, right? So whether he was doing this or not, she probably would still claim he was. So let's continue here. It says, after November 2014 default judgment in his favor, Santana asked for a do-over, explaining that she'd missed the trial because she hadn't been told the date. When her request for a retrial was denied, she sued him for a divorce and continued flinging mud. She accused him of extreme cruelty, adultery, and demanded a disproportionate share of the party's estate because she claimed the breakup was his fault. I mean, come on, y'all. Number 8, Robert Ortega. December 8th, 2015 through, just 9 months after reporting that her son Rudy Farias had vanished, an alleged ruse Houston police say she kept up for 8 years, Santana walked down the aisle again. Imagine that. Imagine your son's missing. 9 months into it, you've had the chance to sit here and develop in a relationship worthy of marriage to somebody. She probably needs someone to control, but again, we now know that Rudy was with her the whole time, right? So anyways, her new husband was Robert Ortega, a longtime licensed pipe fitter from California. Ortega left a wife of 20 years for Santana. Seriously? Seriously. I'll say, seriously. According to a relative who asked to remain anonymous for fear of reprisals from other family members. It's unclear how they met, though Ortega does a lot of travel for work, the relative said. Santana's niece Postal told Insider that Ortega and Santana shared 2 houses, the North Houston house she inherited from Rodriguez and Ortega's own home in Humboldt, Texas. Very interesting. Now, what I'd like to do is just look at some of these documents and whatnot now, just to serve as some examples and whatnot of the things that we've gone over, but we're not going to review all of them, as this would be a huge, long, multi-faceted documentary of a video, and I don't want to put y'all through that. You can read them all down in the description of the link if you want to. So let's get into those now. So the first one is up here, is original petition to declare marriage void. This is between Gilbert, a suit to declare void of the marriage of Gilbert and Janie Santana. And I just want to kind of skip down here. You know, it says this first page, like, basically what's going on, right? So let's move on to the second page to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of it. So if you move down to the second little thing here where it says grounds, it says petitioner and respondent entered into a purported marriage on October 23rd by proxy. Petitioner is in the Air Force, is stationed in Tucson, Arizona. He was stationed there on the date of the marriage ceremony by proxy. The marriage license was issued in the name of the parties but was never returned to the Harris County clerk. It says the marriage is void and of no effect under the provisions, and it gives that. And it also says under the Texas Family Code, because respondent was already legally married in a party to other purported marriages as set out in more detail below, the respondent is currently legally married to at least one of the below described individuals. Now, we'll go into these things down here, and I mean, you see all these receipts that they come back with, right? It's just like, my God, I mean, can you imagine being a judge and getting this, but then also, say it happened one time, right? Which would still be a little light suspect, right? You'd be like, okay, that's kind of weird, but, you know, be careful, other guys. By the time you see her coming back up in the court numerous times, and then the battling, weaponizing the court system, which to me is what this is. I mean, it's like, oh my God, the amount of resources that are wasted, right? So let's go on to the next one. So now in this one, if you go to number C, it says in a temporary hearing requested by Janie on December 1st, 3rd, 2010, the court heard evidence regarding whether a common law marriage existed between the parties, whether Roberto Larios was obligated to support Janie Santana Farias, and whether Roberto Larios was obligated to provide support for Rudy. At the conclusion of the temporary hearing, based in part upon the false testimony of Janie that she was never married to John Paul Gonzalez, but her sister had stolen and assumed her identity and married John Paul Gonzalez, the court found that Roberto Larios and Janie Santana Farias were married. I mean, my God. So this isn't just like some random, identity theft. This is you're saying your sister did it. I mean, is there no low, right? Or floor for her low? I don't think so. Okay, so as you see some of these samples given here and whatnot, where it goes in and you get some of these more details like the sister and whatnot, and it's just, oh my God. So here's what I took from all of this. And again, I'll say it 100 times in this video. This is all alleged right now. This has not gone through court. We don't know if charges are going to be filed or what's going to happen. Now, as you can see right now, it has fallen off the radar, and I do believe that Rudy's mom is like, thank you, Carly Russell, for taking the spotlight off me, okay? Because, I mean, come on. It's like scam after scam after scam, right? But what I think that this shows is a history of using scenarios, family members, and when I say family, like I'm talking, marriages, stuff like that, not blood, but also blood, to pull scams and just hustle and bustle and work people over and steal and all that kind of stuff. We'll see what happens if charges are charges are brought and she is found guilty of any of this stuff. I just think it's sad to see this, and it shines more light on what I think probably took place with Rudy, which I do think he was exploited by her in some fashion or degree. Because again, my whole thing when I read stuff like this is it sounds exhausting. It sounds easier to go get even a minimum wage job somewhere, and just this constant court battles and this and that and this nonstop. I mean, think about how expensive that has to be, right? It blows my mind. And so then when you think, well, if all that ran out and she had hit the end of the road, well, then here is the next scheme. My son's gone missing. We can get that going. You hear about they raised this money and she took it and this and that. It goes on and on and on, and it all seems on brand for all of this. Now, in the beginning, I was like, we're going to see charges, and I'm hoping we will to some level. What those could be, I don't know, because again, I'm very surprised that we haven't seen any. Just from some of the stuff that we've heard and whatnot, I'm like, why hasn't she been arrested or charged with something? I mean, this is insane, right? So maybe they're doing a thorough investigation. I don't know. But hopefully she can be brought to justice, because I just feel like she'll continue to keep doing this. But it also sounds like she's somewhat good at doing this type of stuff, judging from what some of her family members have said and whatnot. So let me know what you think down in the comment sections. And if you are still watching, I greatly appreciate it. So does Mr. Roscoe. In fact, drop some sofas down in the comment section for him. And until we do meet down in that comment section to continue the conversation, I'll see y'all there.